Hello, everybody, and welcome to Artsee's free webinar on the transformative power of art, music, and movement therapy. My name is Padmaja Ganapathy, and I'm the founder of Artsee. So today, we have gathered an extraordinary panel of experts who will share their insights and experiences on how art, music, and movement can be used as powerful tools for personal growth and well-being. From Somdatta Chakraborty's expertise in dance and movement therapy, Dr. Susana Enríquez's profound knowledge of art therapy, from Alice Limoges' soulful music and personal experiences, to Dagmar Rothschild's innovative approach, from John Samson, the first ever Grammy-winning music therapist who's doing some incredible work in music therapy, to Joel Thome's musical resilience in the face of a stroke, and Dr. Conchetta Tomeno's groundbreaking work in music and neurological function. We really have a wealth of knowledge and experience here right now. And to top it off, we also have Deborah Bennett here to share how music therapy has helped her special needs child. Whether you're a parent, caregiver, educator, or simply someone looking to enhance your own well-being, this webinar offers something for everyone. So let's dive in and unlock the power of creativity. I'd like to start by inviting our panelists to give us a snapshot of their work and vision. Dr. Conchetta Tomeno is the executive director and co-founder with renowned author neurologist Oliver Sacks of the Institute for Music and Neurological Function. She's internationally known for her 40-plus years of research in the clinical applications of music and neurologic rehabilitation. She lectures on music therapy throughout the world. Her work has been featured in national programs, documentaries, in international programs, including the BBC, and in books on health and healing.
My work in music therapy has really been to understand how and why music affects neurologic function and how we can use music as a therapeutic tool to help people have the best quality of life, regardless of the types of challenges they may have, both developmentally, but also because of a brain injury or disease. And as you heard, I head the Institute for Music and Neurologic Function, and that was founded back in 1995 when neuroscience and the idea of music in the brain was still pretty much not understood. And the Institute was founded to really bridge those two communities of basic neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience, and clinical music therapy. So together, through dialogues across disciplines, we could help understand what the questions are that need to be researched and how we can take that information to extend the real purposeful use of music, both in clinical music therapy, but also by others who work with individuals who can use music to help maximize function and quality of life. So thank you. I look forward to this engagement and exchange with each other.
Thank you so much, Connie. It's really an honor to have you here. Susie Enríquez is an Australian artist born in Mexico City. Dr. Enríquez studied music, theater, literature, and visual arts at the National Autonomous University of Mexico. Dr. Enríquez is an interdisciplinary artist with a vast culture and solid technical knowledge in painting and printmaking, and has exhibited her art internationally. I mean, I didn't want to start writing the countries, honestly, So I said, let me just say internationally here. Since 2018, Dr. Enríquez has been developing well-being and art workshops based on Frida Kahlo's diary, guiding students with tools to clear and rest the mind, opening their path to full self-expression. Dr. Enríquez?
Thank you very much, Patty. And it's an honor for me to share these moments with all of you. I feel really humble and overwhelmed to be among all these expertises and great people, human beings. And I just want to share a little bit of my contribution as an artist. And in my own experience, I found out when I had a very difficult period of time, when I have the loss of loved ones, very important ones, and I felt in a deep depression, very, very bad depression, and I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And the thing that saved me was the art, was painting, was working on my diary every day and exploring what was inside me, what were the feelings, and what was the thing that was holding me into that deep sadness. So from 1918, I began to do some workshops based on Frida Kahlo after I read about an institution in Mexico who was preparing these courses for teachers, school teachers in general, to work with the students to develop creativity, working on a Frida Kahlo diary. I went exploring that and read all the documents the psychologists and pedagogues did on research to create these exercises for creativity. And then I discovered, I did the first workshop to students that were in the art school to develop creativity. And what I found is that doing the exercises and the way I was leading the exercises according with my experience of how can I really go inside my mind and find what was holding me for creating or for be myself again, then I discovered the students began to show emotional things that were solving through the art exercise and creating a similarity or looking what Frida Kahlo wrote on her diary and how she was finding a way to help herself and survive emotionally all the traumas, all the pain, physical and emotional, that she suffered in her life, a part of the artist, not talking about the artist, but the person, the woman that lived in a moment where women were really considered second-class citizens. There was emotional pain, physical pain, and also a discrimination because she was a rebel, she was a feminist, she was a communist, but she was a great human being. And working with the students, I found at the end of the workshop that the thing was not about creativity, but how they were healing emotions and finding themselves in a path to heal her own problems. And then after that, I began to extend the workshops to everybody, all kind of people. And when I found is that there were, at some point, even catharsis with the students of different ages that found they have something deep inside themselves that couldn't get out, but they finally put it out through the art. And I've been working in that, and especially during the pandemic of COVID-19, I was Harvard institution in Australia to help disabled people who couldn't go out and they need some kind of special therapy that was making art to help to support that isolation and that claustrophobic environment that we had to go through during COVID. So that's what I've been doing, a part of my professional practice and exhibitions. So that's what I can offer, and that's experience, and it's good. It's the music. I also use the music while we are doing the exercises and to create a visual personal diary for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susie. Thanks a lot. I'm just, some questions from the participants. I'm just answering them. We have Dagmar Rothschild here. She has dedicated the first few years towards developing a research framework that draws upon her unique background and bridges music, novel research, and clinical practice. She explores the connections between music and treatment of neurogenic disorders to gain insight into the relationship between musical components and language, and how these two communicative systems create an experience of emotional state and perception of colors. That is so interesting. During her interdisciplinary master's program at CUNY, She conducted independent research, and Imperial Butterfly, her conceptual album, explores the interaction between music and language and its effects on human emotions. Dagmar?
Okay, good morning, everyone. I am so honored to be here amongst all of you. So thank you so much again for having me. Can you hear me, Patty? Yes? Okay. All right. Amazing. Okay, so I am a bilingual clinical fellow speech and language pathologist, and I have a special interest in blending musical elements with traditional speech therapy. I primarily specialize in working with individuals that have had a traumatic brain injury, aphasia, dysarthrias, apraxias, as well as neurodivergent population, that is autism spectrum disorders. And I have, as Patty mentioned, dedicated a number of years to really developing a research and clinical framework that would draw upon my background as a musician, as a composer, and bridge music, novel practice, and novel research. My dream, however, has always been to explore the connections between music and language in respect to rehabilitation. But this whole journey has begun for me slightly different. I did not dream of becoming a clinician or someone who works in rehabilitation. It all started out for me as pursuing artistic pursuits. It is my music that drew me closer to rehabilitation. My album, which I created, composed many, many years ago, which is an exploration of interaction between music and language and its effect on human emotions, perception of color. When that body of work was created, composed, I really did not think about rehabilitation. It all started out as an artistic vision. That alone has really opened up, given me an insight into the connection between music and physiology. My compositions, which later became my thesis, I have written and published a thesis on it, once we dissected it, the written scores, I have understood that there is a intricate relationship between these two domains, language and music, and physiology. And in the process of that journey, that experience can really lead to personal transformation, what I like to call rehabilitation. So in conclusion, I was really led to rehabilitation through scientific inquiry. Currently, I am working in two different settings. I work in schools and also provide services to adult and pediatric population in home care. That's about it.
Thank you so much, Dagmar. John Samson is here. I'm so happy
Hello.
about that. We didn't want to miss you, John. So
I could use some music therapy around now, I gotta tell you.
So John Samson, MA MTBC, is the first board-certified music therapist in history to win a Grammy Award for his self-produced 2019 mental health-based children's album, Ageless, Songs for the Child Archetype. John also received the Bennett Scheibe Pioneering Spirit Award in Music Therapy in 2020, has taken first place 4 times in the International Songwriting Competition, won the John Lennon Award and Parents Gold Choice Award. Based in Brooklyn, New York, John continues to operate his private practice, Co-Creative Music, which he founded in 2005, with a mission to help bring music therapy further into the mainstream. John?
Thank you so much for having me here. As I was saying, I could use some music therapy right about now. I'm usually on my computer and we had these glitches and whatever, but as we know from the creative arts, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. As we know, it's all about the process. And so sometimes when there's a little bit of a challenge that happens, we just got to work with that and make that part of the journey. It is so special to be not just with all of you, but especially with Joel, because he is very much part of my origin story. And in all the times I've gotten to speak about how I came into music therapy, I went to SUNY Purchase. And so I met Joel before I knew what music therapy was. I just heard that there was a teacher who had suffered a stroke and at one point had been told, I'm sure I don't know if you had a chance to speak yet, but I don't want to say too much, but maybe he wouldn't be able to teach again, that Joe wouldn't be able to, but he did because he was rehabilitated in large part by Benedicta Skyby, our late friend and music therapist. She passed away a few years ago. And it was a very organic thing to realize this. I was driving next to a miracle, right? So music therapy, that was my introduction to that. Went straight in, and I would drive Joel from Manhattan into SUNY Purchase quite often, and we would get croissants. And so I moved straight on to NYU music therapy. You just dive right in. What I love about the creative arts therapy programs in general is you go straight into field work. So I was working with people on the spectrum of autism, people with pervasive developmental delays. And I'm not a big fan of labels. Many of us aren't, but let's just say the full spectrum of challenges that a person can face, or even paradoxically, the gifts that come along with those challenges, especially for the people that gather around those people. What I mean by that is parents who have kids on the spectrum often realize that they went through a process of a spiritual awakening through how necessary it was to structure their day around the meals and the activities and to communicate even more effectively than they may have otherwise not. So I've been in practice for almost 20 years. Next year is going to be my 20th year as a board certified music therapist. And I've kind of gone up the developmental ladder, as well as just through age. So when I first came out of the program, I was doing story times with little babies and toddlers and working in preschools. And now some of the kids I work with in their early 20s, I worked with when they were toddlers. Many of them didn't work with me the whole time, but they circled back. And so my primary goal is to bring music therapy more into the mainstream. And so what I realized working more and more with people, regardless of diagnosis, is that we all have an emotional payload. And so, the first thing I learned at NYU, most important thing, which is the opposite of depression, is expression. And so there's so many different ways to do music therapy. So let me also say, however I'm introducing music therapy to you may not be how another music therapist might introduce it to you. But my vocational work really involves drawing the expression out of a person. So for the first 16 years of my practice, I had a studio in Prospect Heights. And in my sessions, the children would come in and just channel. They would improvise. They would just sing off the top of their head with a good pair of headphones into a good mic, and I would intuit the chords that would fit that. And so I made hundreds, if not a few thousand songs like this. And so it's such a rewarding thing to see a child and adult become safe enough to just express and to just empty themselves, especially symbolically. Some people think that we have to push down our emotions because they may be inappropriate. But what we love about creative arts therapy in general is that we're able to sublimate, to express these things in a way that's not personal. You can slam a door and because you're angry, and you can do that once and then you're kind of a jerk, right? But by playing the drums and getting it out somatically, there's just so many nooks and crannies of how music therapy is so powerful, whether you're dealing in a clinical setting, goals and objectives, with really utilizing music for physical therapy goals, occupational therapy goals, and moving more into the mainstream, utilizing music therapy as a vehicle for personal development, transformation. And so the work that I do, it's very person-centered. So it's not just about the music. And music is certainly enough. We have music-centered music therapy. That's a Northrop Robbins approach. But the relationship between the therapist and the client or student or person, really, we're all artists. So I don't want to ramble too much because I'm not going to keep track of time while I'm speaking. I'm just going to keep going. So let me just pause and we can circle back to any questions anybody might have. But for now, I am working exclusively on Zoom. And the way that works is that my clients end up recording something on their own time. to express themselves, and then they'll share the file with me, and then I'll drop it into Pro Tools and I'll play on the piano in real time and record it, or vice versa. So I have developed some methods of working virtually and remotely via Zoom, but there's nothing that quite replaces being in person in the same room playing music with people. Anyway, I hope that wasn't too much of a word salad, so I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. That was fascinating, John. Thank you so much. Joel Thome, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Who doesn't know Joel, right? A Grammy Award recipient, Pulitzer Prize nominee, Joel is an internationally acclaimed composer of classical and contemporary orchestral music, having conducted various prominent and international orchestras. Thome is a renowned conductor of opera and other music theater works. He has collaborated with a number of renowned musicians, visual artists, filmmakers, choreographers. Again, if I started writing Joel's bio, it'll never end, right? So all the bios are on the website. Please go take a look. You can't miss them. But I have to say that in 1994, Joel's polygram verb recording of Zappa's Universe received a Grammy Award for the Best Rock Instrumental. He also dealt with the worst effects of his debilitating stroke with music therapy and is here to share his personal story with us. Thank you so much, Joel, for sharing your story.
I had always conducted Stravinsky by memory, so I went 5 times through L'Histoire de Soldat from the first note to the last note in my mind. And in one hand, I was conducting 4, and I thought that in the other hand, I was conducting 5. And I'm sure that that helped keep me together in a very powerful way. So my wife came in and said, well, we're calling 911. When the stroke first hit me, I couldn't even feed myself with my right hand. But I had to learn to walk again. I had to learn to overcome paralysis because I was paralyzed on the left side for many months. When I was recovering from my stroke, 7 months in the hospital, I put earphones on my head and listened to Bach 24/7. When I had my stroke and I was on the floor, I was going through all the scores that I had memorized, including Stravinsky. And I was going through from first note to the last note of Stravinsky, L'Histoire de Soldat. That was going through my head constantly. So I listened to everything that I had memorized. I listened to Mahler's Second Symphony inside my own head. I listened to Bartók, everything. And I think that's what saved my memory. The constant replaying of those memorized scores during my 7 months in the hospital were tremendous asset to the healing process. And Oliver Sacks was my physician for a while. When I went to the second hospital that I was at for about 4 months, they had a very effective and very intense music therapy program. Beth Abraham. And I worked with 2 music therapists.
I met Joel Thome in 1998. The connection was made in a very interesting way. He called me up. I was sitting at home, and over the phone he asked me if I was familiar with Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, because he was looking for a music therapist that liked contemporary music and was using that as a music therapy form. And I said, yes, as a matter of fact, I, in Denmark, was a member of the group of intuitive music that played his music and had visits from him where he listened to our music and he wrote music for group for intuitive music. So a few weeks later, he was a patient here, and he had suffered a debilitating stroke. And very quickly we were engaged in very, very interesting music therapy sessions, and we worked for 4 months, and it was, I would say, one of the most interesting, fascinating treatment processes that I have ever experienced in my life.
Sometimes my mind just spins out of control. I think if it starts in the angry place, it'll spin like a gyroscope in the angry place. If it starts in the sad place, it'll spin like a gyroscope in the sad place.
Naturally, we started listening to music and used music to move to, and in the third session, he started actually conducting with his right hand, and I helped him to move the left hand in the hopes that the movements and the messages to the brain from the right hand may transfer to the other part of the brain that had been damaged. Unfortunately, it didn't work. The arm was still paralyzed, but at least that was a starting point to get going and moving, and using music as a resource of healing.
My take on it was restructuring my mind, particularly with Bach, when I just put the earphones on and listened 24/7 to Bach.
So just to show you that music therapy saved my life, and Connie, bless you for doing that. Other people will curse you for that, but I bless you for that. I thank you so much.
We'd love to go to Alice from Maine. Thank you, Alice, for joining us. Alice has been singing since before she could walk, whether performing her poetic songs about love and nature or shining a light on mental health. Alice's canon is lit up by her storytelling, unique soulful voice, and sophisticated instruments. She has released 6 original albums, EPs, toured festivals, colleges across North America, and even contributed to John Samson's Grammy Award-winning album. Additionally, she's a music educator, emphasizing self-expression through songwriting, drawing on the healing experience music has provided her through her own struggles, which we'd like to hear from her now. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Patty. It's so cool to be here, especially with Joel and John, who are both such big influences for me as mentors and role models. Yeah, so I also went to SUNY Purchase, which is where I met Joel, and was struggling a lot with my bipolar 2 disorder at that time. And I found one of the most powerful concerts I was able to give in my entire life was when I was admitted to a psychiatric ward for like intense suicidal ideation, and I just lost my love and connection to music. But then in that space with all that free time, there was this old out-of-tune piano and some of the keys didn't work, and I just felt myself drawn there in all the free time, and was playing my songs that just went so deep into these dark parts of how I was feeling. And just to see everybody there kind of at this low point in their life so drawn to that just gave me this new fire for music. And I continued to work on my healing after that, and am now a music educator myself. And I got to intern with John for a few months when I lived in New York during college. And it made a profound influence on how I teach now of his co-creative method of like improvisation and songwriting. And while I'm not a musical therapist, I love that I get to bring a little flavor of that healing and self-expression. And my students, this just becomes their happy place, and they're able to get out big feelings and have that relationship with myself and others. And I even get to provide performance opportunities for them, record them on the fancy Neumann and have them hear like, oh my God, I have something here. And it's just beautiful. So I love music, love to all of you, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Alice. Really, thank you so much. Somdatta here. Somdatta is a movement therapist. She's an interdisciplinary artist, educator, and clinical counselor. She has curated works of Tagore in collaboration with world musicians and has performed internationally. She has a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling with dance movement therapy as a concentration. Her recent work on domestic violence, We Rise, has won numerous international awards. She has also won the Global Music Awards in the category of female vocalist and music video, to name just a few. Somdatta continues to inspire others to utilize movement and music to embrace harmony and healing through their agency of self. Somdatta.
Padmaja, thank you so much for this wonderful, wonderful, platform, and where we can discuss the interconnections between art, healing, therapy, empowerment, all of that. So I've had so much learning just listening to all of you. And first of all, thank you for all your good work. I used to be an artist. Of course, I'm trained in classical dance. And then I went into the corporate world, and that used to be my dream, climbing the corporate ladder at some point of time. And one day I felt like, what am I doing? It was like an existential crisis. And that's exactly when I started kind of skewing towards art in a more focused way. I did start curating works on Tagore, which were very universal thoughts in collaboration with other artists, which were learning for me. And there were points of time when I used to sing Tagore, and I used to begin crying because, the melody used to take me to those spots. But I started kind of introspecting on why this was happening a little too often, because I had lost my father very long time back. It was very hard. I had never processed the grief and loss for a long time. My way of moving on with life and working and getting busy, as we call it. So there was never a point when I had catharsis over the feelings of grief and loss. Never stopped to think about that. So I think somewhere music helped me with my loss in a big way, just like I hear all of your stories. I then I felt a second kind of set of void in my life, which was movement, because I had not danced for a long time. And that's when I started reviving dance. I started learning modern dance with a very younger bunch. They would be going flying around the floor doing ballet. But it was a wonderful experience where I kind of embraced my own breath and kind of had control over how I moved. So here I was, from a classical dancer to understanding modern dance and kind of emoting with the music, which I think was a very fresh experience for me. And I realized that dancing slowly was helping me with my loss of my dad, which I had never processed so many years back. And I decided to kind of continue this process of learning. Again, as we heal ourselves, is what I believe. And yes, it felt great. The whole idea of externalizing all my suppressed feelings in a very, nascent manner. And the symbolism, the meaning behind the movement, I started understanding it a lot. My professors were the ones who kind of said, "Hey, Somdatta, I think dance movement therapy would be great for you." And I had no plans of dance movement therapy. So I went into dance movement therapy, and that's when I really started understanding what it meant and what empathy even meant, because a lot of us confuse sympathy and empathy. So understanding those terms and all of that, working now, I work with clients who have schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, trauma, depression, PTSD, anxiety. So my job is working with them, empowering them through movement, helping them restore their loss of control in their lives and even the belief in themselves. And I've had some wonderful transformative experiences in the process, and it's really been a wonderful learning, combining art, music, dance, imagination, all of that. So someday my vision is probably to kind of inculcate a very inclusive choreography, because all my choreography and art has changed. My choreography is very trauma based. It's more social cause based, something relevant that you can make out of like communication rather than just choreographing a dance piece altogether. So I think that's been a learning where I am trying to inculcate my learnings of dance movement therapy into my art, getting the music that I know, which is pretty much the world music, and exploring the world through their music. And one day, hopefully, I'll have a choreography where everybody can participate from all kinds of abilities. And that would be my dream, also to work with various rhythms. Rhythm is very centric to my approach. And that could be any rhythm. It could be classical, Indian rhythm to modern, any other contemporary rhythms. So I'm very happy to be here to discuss more on how art therapy, metaphorical expression, symbolism can really heal us in and out. So thank you again, and hoping for a wonderful, wonderful session here.
Thank you, Somdatta. Thank you so much, our movement therapist here today. Um, I'd love to welcome Deborah Bennett, who has been kind enough to join us today. She is a dear friend and the mom of an amazing 11-year-old boy who's non-verbal autistic. She runs an adventure club for families affected by developmental disabilities. She's also the council chair for a regional family support services council in New York State and college students. Deborah, could you tell us about your experiences?
Hi. First off, I'm have to tell you, I am humbled to be a part of this panel. You are all like so talented and beautiful people. And like I use everything that you were all saying, I use on a daily basis with my own child. So we start the day off every day with music therapy. My son is very rhythmic. He likes to rock a lot. So our trip to school every day starts with his music list. It gets him like in the right mood, at the stable mood for the day. It's very comforting, the familiarity of it. There is also it's led, I know there's a speech therapist on the panel, and it has led this love of music has led to speech for him, because we have like Amazon Alexa, and we taught James to actually speak to her to get the music he wants. So that's another piece that is really helpful with the music. Another one is his art therapy, his drawings. James he's considered nonverbal because he doesn't communicate in a typical way. He can't hold a conversation with you. He can speak, you really can't converse very well. So a lot of times if he's feeling emotional, he'll draw what he's feeling so we can help him through that emotion. And a lot of times just drawing it out helps him get past that emotion as well. So, but music is really his thing. I mean, we have just about every instrument in the house, and he's not great at any of them, but he plays them all. So I'm so humbled to be a part of this panel.
Thank you so much for sharing your personal story, Deborah. Thank you so much. Connie, I have a question for you, coming off of Deborah's here. Like, do you have any specific, is it anything different that you do for children who are nonverbal, as in terms of music therapy, as opposed to like you were doing for someone with a stroke, for instance, right?
Sure. Well, a lot of my work in music therapy and work in the neuroscience is understanding where the components of music, the rhythm, the melody, share neurologic processes with other types of function like speech and movement. And so one of the things we know from research, for example, that the child who's pre-language, and I don't know, Deborah, if this is true for your kid, but many kids who are pre-language have poor rhythm perception. And because the brain can't process the pattern of sound, they're really unable to understand patterns of speech. And so they can't pick up the nuance of their native language or any language for that matter. And so research that's been done has shown that by first introducing the child to be able to replicate and interpret different types of patterns, that those sensory maps get formed in the brain that allow to develop into understanding patterns of speech. Now, that may not be the case for a kid along the spectrum, because they may be able to understand verbal sounds very well. And it may be another type of issue, so maybe expression. So each child, each person really brings a different set of challenges and a different neurologic makeup that's getting in the way of their being able to do something. And so what we'll do, and my music therapy and every music therapist uses their skills to really be able to interact personally with that client or person that they're working with. So it may be working on emotional expression, it may be working on sound production, it may be working in improvisation to see what types of patterns come through. So it really depends on the individual and understanding where they're being challenged, and then using the music to support that.
James does have apraxia, so we do a lot of mirror modeling when we're reading. So
the interesting thing about music and speech, and there's a wonderful book by Annie Patel, who's in neurosciences, who's now at Tufts, called Music, Language, and the Brain, where he really analyzes the parallels between music, sound, and the speech mechanisms. So we know, for example, that people, and I'm sure Dagmar, you know this very well, that people with motor issues related to speech, it's the organization and sequencing of that motor function. And when we sing, we naturally integrate that hierarchy of motor function to produce a song. Whereas if we had to think about it, maybe we had a brain injury, maybe we have a developmental delay, thinking about to breathe first, take a deep breath, move your lips, all the patterns that the speech therapist may instruct somebody to do may be very challenging for somebody who can't think through that. But if they can naturally make the sound, encouraging those natural sounds to come out, then reinforces all the mechanisms of speech that eventually become available to the individual to develop further. And we always work in collaboration with speech language pathologists and other people on the team to be really able to support through music the different types of therapies the person may be going through. And that could be psychotherapeutic or more, prescriptive uses of music, depending on what the needs are of the individual.
Thank you so much, Connie. We have a question from Stanley Grill, a great composer himself, who's in our participants today. He asks, there are so many different styles of music. I'm curious if in anyone's experience, the type of music matters when used to heal. For instance, does someone's cultural background make a difference? Does classical music affect people differently from other types of music? Does music from different musical traditions, Indian, Western, Middle Eastern, Chinese, have different effects? Who would like to go here? John, would you like to?
Well, I'm going to say yes. And also, I'm not an ethnomusicologist. So it really depends on your focal point. It's almost like even with diet, right? I can give you a piece of fruit, and that may be just the thing that your body needs for nourishment, or it could cause an allergy. And so, you're always meeting the client wherever they're at, So if a client has a proclivity towards a certain type of music that helps bring familiarity, makes them feel safe, etc., then that's going to be a great fit. Sometimes a person needs something that's quite the opposite of what they think they need. But again, it depends on, my method. It's really about getting the client to improvise, to express themselves. And so, we could come up with all sorts of reasons why microtonal music can create more of a nuanced sense of feeling. So really, it's case by case. So, but in general, of course, like the whole spectrum of music from across the globe, across cultures, is going to have its own unique essence, as well as a universality when you're dealing with rhythm and tone and feeling.
Thank you so
I'd
much.
like to add to what John just said, because that's absolutely true. But we do know that there's some aspects of music, regardless of culture, things like frequency and range and tempo, that affect our physiological states. And some of that can be universal in a sense. And this is not looking at, affecting, well, I shouldn't say that because it could affect emotions too. But there's certain ways that the brain responds to frequencies that excites or diminishes activity. So for example, I consult on an app called Spirit Tune. And Spirit Tune uses composed music, novel music, that includes certain rhythmic patterns, certain envelopes of sound, to basically induce somebody into a certain state, emotional state. And that could be going from excited or anxious to chill and relaxed. And that is all based on physiological responses and neurologic responses to entrainment through sound. And so that's regardless of culture, pretty much. It is really based on the way the neurons in the brain fire in response to certain frequencies of sound. So it's really the whole spectrum. Clinically, when we talk about music therapy, we're more talking about the individual and the interaction. But there are these prescriptive uses of sound that may, in a lot of cultures, are part of treatment already, that can really be used advantageously in very, very direct ways to affect entrainment. So that should be known too, because there's really that full spectrum of music that's available.
Michael here has a question. He says, I often wondered if you need the music you grew up with, but I fell in love with Indian music. And the first time I heard Ravi Shankar and Zakir Hussain, was not surprised when I told him this. I use Indian music in my arts and medicine. Have you all found this to be so? Joel, did you have something to say about it?
I find this a very interesting question, because the question dealt with also growing up the music, but as we grow, we also grow the river finds many pathways. What I've discovered is that the mind is healer, music is the messenger, so that we are always in this process of growth. And what we grew up with as children is not necessarily the music that nourishes us.
Thank you, Joel. Dagmar, have you worked with children, right? Your take on this?
Yes, can you repeat the question, please?
Your take on this, like what a child or what anyone grows up with, as opposed to music that's introduced later on. Have you seen any such inclination?
Well, my whole approach is really rooted in the belief, and this is from research and my own personal experiences. As I have mentioned earlier, I have grown into this clinician really through personal experiences and my music, really my art, integration of both aspects. But the way I approach, specifically when I work with kiddos on the spectrum, and I have a whole number of them, and most of them are nonverbal. I work with melody. My whole system of belief, clinical, is really centered around melody. And I will not go into the actual components of melodies. I'm sure everyone here understands that melody is not just the melodic contour. There is all kinds of other information, musical information, and then underneath all of that, there is acoustic information, right? That brain absorbs. But I believe that melody is a physiological phenomenon. Everyone within each and every one, every person has an internal melody, and that itself reverberates through all the systems, physiological systems. Unfortunately, we still do not have enough research that sort of integrates the interdisciplinary aspect, specifically music and neurology / speech, music therapy, how that bridge is connected. So we could, let's say, create a device, create a system that could translate one medium into another and create a whole rehabilitative approach. But when I use melodic contours to regain communicative function with kiddos that do not speak, the results are phenomenal because you integrate. I work with psychoacoustics. You integrate pitches and rhythmic patterns to recreate, reestablish communication, and the effects are extraordinary. So that is really my area of practice, but I am still developing and I'm learning more. And I gotta say that Joel has been instrumental in supporting my whole work for a number of years. And then, of course, Dr. Thome has been, I have always been reading up on the things that she's doing because she has really been a pioneer. And although she's on the other side of the spectrum because it's music therapy, her work has influenced. It has given me, aside from Ani Patel, yes, he has written this phenomenal book, and I have spoken to Dr. Patel many times, and we have exchanged emails on the work that I am doing. But it is really Dr. Thome, her work that has that I have held on to. It has helped me lay a foundation for the things that I am doing in clinical practice.
Thank you, Dagmar. Thank you so much. While we are on the topic of music therapy, Alice, since you're practicing this.
I am not a music therapist.
But you're practicing it, right? Like you've experienced it for yourself. So could you tell us in your experience, like music that was too familiar to you or new music that comes into your life? Do you see any distinction there?
Yeah, I mean, I think both, like the stuff I listened to when I was younger becomes like this lens of everything, further on. It's like that framework. It's the skeleton of how I connect to music as an adult, and I'm always finding new stuff. And it's cool working with children as my students as well, to see a lot of times like what you're exposed to at home is not necessarily what's going to be the most inspiring, and getting to share music, sort of think about what you notice they're liking and thinking, okay, what is it about that they like, and kind of bringing something new, having a much broader spectrum of music. And also as a songwriter, how new influences will change how I write and record and perform. And definitely it's always branching out, and there is that foundation of what I listened to as a child and teenager that's so important to the core of how I create now and how I think about music. But yeah, I mean, I think that the new stuff is great, and it's great to always be expanding and finding new influences.
Thank you. Thank you, Alice. We have a question on movement therapy. How does one access dance movement therapy or know that the tool is available to cope with stress or trauma? The general notion is that I need to know to dance or even sing to be able to benefit. It's a very deep question, very important one.
Yes, so I think with dance movement therapy, what one needs to do is, first of all, you don't need to know a particular style of dance, because dance movement therapy is really about embracing your own movement, your authentic movement, basically externalizing internal feelings that are repressed. And so, how do you really access it on a daily life is you could either have silence, and you can wait for impulses to come in from within, and you can start moving in a way you want to move, however you want to move at that point of time. Embrace your feelings in the here and now, which is at the present. Or you could put music and wait for impulses to come from within, which is being aware of your body sensations, more body awareness of really how are you. So for example, like, how am I feeling today? Can we just start, let's just test it out on the panelists, right? So simple thing, how am I feeling right now? Does somebody want to move in a way and kind of gesture it out? I mean, that might be a best example. So let me just say, I am feeling wonderful, right? So now my body posture is expanded. It's more extended. It feels happy. It reflects who I feel inside. So that exactly is what movement is. So I can just, I mean, do the panelists want to try right now? How do you feel today? Just a gesture. See, we got all our unique styles. Yes. John is in all planes. He's trying to move in all planes. I saw Alice also with extended, and I saw Conchetta. Conchetta, what would that mean for you right now?
Content.
See how beautiful it is. And just an example, Dr. Susana, I'm sorry, I didn't notice your movement. What did you just do? And that would mean?
You're muted, Susie.
Sorry, Dr. Susana, you're muted. Can you please tell me how you felt?
Oh, yeah, I feel fantastic. I'm learning so much. Oh, my goodness. Me
too.
Yes, I'm learning. Oh, my goodness. I'm discovering new things. Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
That's awesome. Deborah, you want to share something?
I'm just kind of in awe. Like, I feel like, Dr. Susana, I am learning a lot right now.
That's wonderful. Joel, what did you do for your movement? Like, how do you feel right now? And I love it. Is that centered, grounded, something on those lines?
Namaste.
Namaste. Oh,
beautiful. So you see how everybody's movement and feelings reflect their uniqueness of feelings at this point of time. So dance movement therapy is as simple as that. You go through warm-ups, which is top to down. You kind of notice body sensations of the day, make yourself more aware of the body. At the end of all of this process, like thematically, you can move anyway. You're actually embracing space, time. You're embracing your own body image. You're introspecting on it. So in ways, it kind of breaks your thinking process in a more aware fashion. You become more aware. That's how it kind of works. It stimulates inner reflection. So, but the movement is something that is just your own. It doesn't kind of stick to a particular style to kind of shorten that response.
that was beautiful. I love the way you involved all of us, and we felt, we almost got some therapy there. Thank you so much. Got to just let go and do something. Let's go to art therapy now. Susie is here from Australia. It's actually midnight for her, or 1 a.m. Thank you so much, Susie. So we have Manoj Kumar, an artist from India, and he asks, music and art are known to have an effect on neuronal function and the state of mind. Can you share some scientific references or research that has gone into it, or any kind of thoughts on it, Susie?
Yeah, well, the experience I have had about this is when I ask people to write a gratitude letter. I asked them to, after different exercises and automatic writing and association of ideas, and writing one word and start associating things. And then I asked them to write a gratitude letter. And when they began to do that exercise, they become very quiet. They begin to think different I mean, they have different moments. And then when I see someone that doesn't write anything, I ask, oh, what happened? Why don't you start writing? And I found a couple of times one person said, I don't have anything to be gratitude for. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you think about it, and then you will find you can be gratitude to be alive yourself, just something, anything. And so they began to write. And another person said, oh, I want to write something to my father that I never say thank you for. And he passed away many years ago. And they began to write these gratitude letters. And I asked them, they can share what they wrote or not. Half of the time, half of the students decide not to share, but when they finish the letter, they are crying. They get into a catharsis. And then other people share it, and they are very touching letters. And what I found, or I read about gratitude, is how the brain began to work. I mean, I'm not an expert. Excuse me for if I said it's just my personal experience or what I see with the people I work with. But they get really touched, and they left that day, and the next day they come and tell me, you know what, the letter I wrote before, at the end, I suffer when I was writing the letter, but at the end, I just felt so relieved. And then I felt happy because it was something that was hidden inside me, something that I couldn't bring up for many years. And then I felt happy. So I read there is some research that has been done about the gratitude. Gratitude is one of the feelings that can cause in the brain chemistry, because then make people that they finally have something to share, that they are, they have something, even if it's little, but then begin to think that is in abundance. And also I explained that gratitude is more than say thank you. And also, as the conclusion I got with this, after all this letter, is that the people change their perspective of their world. It's like the brain begins to see, the attitude of the person. I'm not going to talk physiological, but the attitude of the person changed. And obviously there's been a little change in them, I don't know, in the physiological way that help them to look things in a different way. And some people have told me, Susana, I spoke with my psychologist about what exercises I've done with you, and I show her the letter, and the psychologist told the student, oh my goodness, how could you write this letter in a workshop, in an art therapy workshop of 2 days, and you were not able to write this letter in all these years you have been coming to me. Then I have an art therapy who came to do my workshop. And at the end, he wrote a letter to me and said, oh, Susana, I cannot believe I learned. And it was a therapy for myself. I was working with people, and then with your workshop, I found that was that you heal some parts of me that were hidden in my brain, and I was not able to take it out. So that's the thing, the rewarding of the art therapy, because it's not only the writing a gratitude letter, but it's doing exercise of drawing. They have to draw a self-portrait. They have to draw their body and show me what parts of their body are causing troubles, why. And the self-portrait is very confronting because some of them are not artists. And the first thing they said, I don't know how to draw. Well, that's it's something that is not possible. I tell them you can draw, because in the art is about giving them the opportunity to explore themselves, to look inside themselves. And they said, I don't know how to draw. Then I quickly show them how easy it is to draw a portrait. It doesn't have to be perfect. It could be a circle and 2 lines and 1 triangle and whatever. And then I show them. And what happened is they don't, and I give them a mirror. So they look at them and do the self-portrait. And I found for them that's very confronting because sometimes they don't recognize what they see in the mirror. So when I tell them, doesn't matter, just try to find what you can see there and draw it in any way. And so it's a process where I found at the end of the workshop, people live with an extra tool to explore themselves, to heal themselves, and to keep finding a way to express themselves and to find how they can feel good and how can they be happy and how can they continue the journey to finding themselves and keep doing some exercises also that can relax them. If they are stressed, just do some Scrabbles. If you have some doubts or anything, just make a letter. Define yourself. I ask the question, what is your mark in the world? What do you think you are doing here? Draw it or write it or do a collage. And then began to do, because I don't put any pressure and I offer a variety of little things like ink, color pencils, collage. And suddenly it's like looking at a group of children, no matter what age, and I'm talking from 30 to 60, mid-60s people. And suddenly it's like looking at a group of children working and exploring without any judgment, without any thing that everyone is an artist or is going to be an artist, but it's the way to find some joy and find themselves exploring and discover that there's creativity on every one of us. So there's 3 cases of people who heal in a way that, or they found a way to face life in a way that they couldn't find it with the psychologists, with the other therapies they were doing. But sometimes I use the music. Sometimes I put the music and they begin to remember things because I ask them to write a story about their childhood. And then we put music and then they start saying, oh, that's the music that we listen with my parents. Oh, that's the music that yes, when they were playing that music. And so the memories and everything, and they ask them to put all that on a diary and write about that or draw about that. And it's always beautiful stories. But at the same time, what they are doing, we are looking at Frida Kahlo diary. And she went through all those processes because the way she was facing the pain was through art. And her diary showed all the moments she went through. And she wrote, scribbled, the collage, lots of drawings just to express herself and try to heal herself and to face the painful life, physical and emotional life she had. I hope that answered a bit about the question, Patty.
Absolutely, Susie. It took me a minute to find the mute button here. So just looking at the questions that are coming in. And I have to say that actually we have a very great panel of participants here. And I would love for them also to be a part of this. We do plan to have a series of these webinars specifically on art, music, and movement therapy because one webinar just ain't enough. And so we will be having other panelists on, but you're all welcome to come back to this. And from these webinars, we plan to branch off into specific workshops. So having said that, I would like to invite the audience. Before that, I would just open the floor to John. He would like to say something about emotional digestion. That is very intriguing, John.
Yes, I would very much like to. I asked. It's my, because just to kind of substantiate what I meant by spreading music therapy more to the mainstream, and I think that there's such an intersection with all of our respective fields. So what I really focus on is the breath, and I'm sure that we all do in our own way. So what I realized was that the more we think, the less we breathe. And the less we breathe, the less the diaphragm is moving. We have chronic digestion issues, constipation issues, and anything dealing with the gut really involves the entirety of the immune system, how the body is able to function and thrive. And so even something as simple as humming, toning, emptying the lungs as much as possible so that the parasympathetic nervous system can reset. Because a lot of the things that happen, especially with pain, I'm sure you guys know the work of Sarno, it's that lack of oxygen, the lack of oxygenation throughout the body. And so coupling the humming with the movement therapy and the speech therapy and all of that. But really, my goal for any client is to get them to empty the lungs. I mean, you could do that in a physical therapy setting just by doing resistance exercise, right? But I just wanted to mention that because sometimes the simplest things kind of fall off the radar, and truly we hold so much right here. A lot of the time, I never say to somebody, take a deep breath. I say, let out what's already in there. There's probably a catchier way to say that, right? But otherwise you're adding new air to old air that's still stuck there. It's like my Jewish mom always wants to feed whoever walks through the door, but sometimes they need some more time to digest. Anyway, I just wanted to touch on that because I think it impacts all of us. And so that was something I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, John. That was really incredible. That's the distinction is really important right here. It was very important. No, I'm also learning so much today. Thank you so much. I'd like to call in a couple of people from the participants. We have Juan Bilia, who has done a lot of work with children, especially. Juan, would you be able to unmute yourself?
You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, my experiences with groups of students. I taught many years in public schools in New York City, and in many of the schools I went to were District 75 schools, which are schools for children with special needs. And besides the fact of music and its importance in developing and healing, group work also adds something to it because children start to feed on each other's ideas, on what they do. I had cases, for example, two of the things that I mostly teach are songwriting and percussion with found objects. So in songwriting, when kids with special needs start to, tell the group what they feel, what they think, and we start to put it in a song, and they realize that what they feel and think can actually be turned into music that later on they will perform on a stage for their parents. And sometimes we even make videos of it, so they have a video of it. Well, they really get excited and it really takes them to another level. On the other hand, when I taught percussion in school, I remember that I was terrified because the kids had a lot of problems, physical problems with movement. So when you have to do percussion and you have to move and you have to hit with a drumstick on a bucket in this case, or on a pan, it's a little more challenging. Well, they love the challenge. So I challenged them. And it so happened that there was this little girl that I thought was going to be incapable of doing anything that turned out to have an incredible tempo. So much so that I told the rest of the kids, I put her as an example. And because she had such good tempo when she played, the rest of the group played better because they had like a reference. And it was a very happy experience for all of them. Some of the teachers even shed a tear because they didn't think that their students could do something like that. So anyway, working in a group is what I do most, and I don't know if this is helpful for anybody, but that's my little input.
Thank you so much, Juan. That was very helpful, and especially that story about that little girl is very touching. I'd also like to call upon Michael. Michael Brody is also a music therapist. Michael?
Hi, so you can hear me now. Oh, I have video, but you'll just get my picture. Hi, yeah, I worked with Benedicta Schreiber, became a good friend, and we worked together. Actually, when I told her that I'm a violinist and I've worked a lot with music and sound, and when I said to Benedicta, I can do a workshop with you with the music meditation part, even though I'm not a music therapist, she said, yes, you are. You use music in your own way to heal people. That was good, I guess, arts and medicine. What I do in my workshops is use Indian music and other music and let people vocalize in just whatever effect it has on them and have them singing. I studied Indian music for many years, classical music, but my direction was not to be a performer of Indian ragas, although I started to go there. It was to use the music as a healing modality. And I posted something, I just want to mention one other thing. I posted something in the chat that I had a great sitarist friend in Shantiniketan, Bengali, named Trina Roy, who used the sitar. And when she had lived in Germany, she told me that it wasn't important what Indian ragas or notes she chose, but more the relationship with the patient, which has always stayed with me to some degree. So when I use an Indian raga, although I did recordings with a physiologist in southern India, I don't think it matters as much which raga I choose, although in northern Indian music you would choose, particular ones as she did, but more just using my intuition and being in the moment. So that's one thing. And I just wanted to share briefly, I have a niece by choice. I think the Hawaiians call it an Ohana niece, who's 10, her name's 7. I introduced her to violin when she was 6, and she gravitates towards anything that makes sound. I speculate that she's mildly on the spectrum, but I have no idea. She's very communicative, so she doesn't give a sign like that, but I don't know about that. But when I get together with her or she comes to my home, she gathers everything she can find in my place that makes sound. My meditation gongs, rain stick, anything she can find, she brings it together and she just experiments with sound and teaches me. It's just a beautiful experience being with 7. I was with her the other night on Zoom, and I brought a drum over and started playing a Zika rhythm, and she said, Uncle Michael, the violin's not, she's playing the violin, violin's not on anything that makes sound, and she starts doing things with it. She takes envelopes and she says, doesn't that sound like water? So anyway, she's been a great joy in my life and inspiration. And what a friend told me, she has structured lessons, Suzuki and all, but what I give her is an hour for her to do whatever she wants with me. And she runs the show. Says, no, Uncle, I'll go to the piano. I'm going to do this and you're going to follow me. Now we're going to improvise together. And the gift is that I let her, I don't know if you do that with therapy, but I just let her run the show. And it's great.
Great. Thank you so much, Michael. That was really, really nice of you to jump in and tell us about your experiences. Deb, yes, please. You have something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on what Juan said real quick about the girl that he didn't think would be capable of anything and wound up being the one with the best tempo. I can speak to that for sure because James is a completely different kid when it comes to music. If you give him, he's very quiet and held back and reserved a lot of the time, but anything to do with music, he comes alive every time. So he will grab a microphone, he will sing for you, he will play any instrument you give to him, and he'll let it all out. So I think that we underestimate everyone, and music can really help bring that out of anyone. So I think that's why music therapy is so helpful for so many people.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw a question out there. My question here is, how Connie, John, doing music therapy or even art and Somdatta, does it take a long time to see the effects? Because medicines are more like, medications quicker, kind of. In your experience, anyone wants to jump in and answer? I see Connie.
Yeah, it really depends again on the individual. So, I mean, Joel is a great example, right? Can I say, Joel, when you came in, they said you'd never walk again, and I actually interacted with the physical therapist because they were doing traditional physical therapy. They were trying to get his good side to compensate for his bad side and totally ignoring, the movement that he might still have residual movement in his affected side. And I said, no, he's a percussionist. He's a conductor. He can do this. His brain has these residual networks that can compensate. And so they changed the strategy for him. Each person is different. And so it really depends. It really depends on the individual. One of the things we're working on right now, and there's been some good studies, people who have dementia many times have agitation and behaviors. And again, the first things that the physicians do is give them medication to reduce the agitation. And yet we've done some research, and there's been some great studies published that show that, in this case, personalized music that has an attachment to that individual, or autobiographical nature to it, will actually calm them down, help them feel safe, and allow them in that moment, and that carries over too, of not having those aggressive, disruptive behaviors. And so here we have a non-pharmacological treatment approach to allow that. Now in music therapy with those individuals, who may actually work with them to express those feelings, express that frustration in a constructive way that allows them to be heard and recognized and accepted, even though they don't have the verbal ability to say what's wrong. And so we have a way of doing it both as a treatment by using personalized music and as a clinical interpersonal relationship in the context of music therapy, where they get to express their feelings. Both of those cases in research have shown a great diminish of agitated behaviors and pro-social behaviors. And so here's a way, and we're trying to get policymakers to pay attention, because we can greatly reduce the use of pharmacological treatment, which has a long-range negative effect on on people who have dementia, because some of those drugs actually make them more catatonic and non-responsive and take away their ability to have interpersonal relationships. So definitely for that. For things like, I work with people with Parkinson's disease who may have trouble in movement, in being able to coordinate their movement, or may shuffle or have slowness or hesitation. With those individuals, the rhythm in that moment allows them to walk better, to walk in a more synchronous way, and to be able to carry that. There's been research that's in the moment, but there's been research that shows if the person uses their internal singing of that rhythm, they can carry it through anytime they need it. And then that eventually, because of the increased coordination of motor function, actually has carryover. So studies are just coming out that show the long range implications of this more sort of a treatment-oriented use of sound and music. In special cases, people who've had aphasia, who've recovered speech, things like that. The person that Joel had mentioned that we worked with completely recovered speech after a major stroke. So it again, it depends on the treatment. People who have depression, who've gone through music therapy, have learned ways of self-regulating. John talked about breathing and these ways of helping the person internalize what they're feeling through the music. Those have long-range carryover too. And so I think what we need to do is find a way to advocate on a policy level to change the paradigm. In fact, I was thinking about this when everybody was talking about the educators who use music. And when we talk about creativity, we have to change the paradigm that creativity is only for the professional musicians and the professional artists. That in fact, we're all born with creativity, whether that's, sound creativity, whatever. We all have self-expression. We all have ways of expressing that. And the worst thing I think that has ever happened is telling somebody they're not an artist, they're not a musician, they don't sing, or they can't sing, because we all can do all those things. And we all have this innate creativity that I think comes out in these therapeutic experiences, because it's going to the inner child of these individuals who've been not only faced with, trauma of some kind, but have also been faced with the absence of allowing creativity in their lives. And so I think one of the things we can all do is really support people in having them express themselves, having them have a voice, and having them use the art in a way that allows them to be fulfilled and to overcome whatever kind of challenges they may have.
Well said, Connie. Connie, that really goes to the core of everybody, and especially Artsee. That is why Artsee exists, because we believe our vision is everybody is a creative. It's just that you don't accept it. You don't want to accept it, but everybody is a creative. And this is what I feel like. Yes, technology brings you a lot of things. It also brings you war, but art will bring peace. And art is what, like, even if you look at corporate America, right? The reason it is what it is, and the bigger companies get, the worse they become, is because they lose the creativity and they get into boxes. So do not get me started on this topic of everyone being creative. I'll go forever. But there is a question from the audience. Peter Simpson, a wonderful artist. Check him out on Artsee. His work is really, really mind-blowing. He asks, do you feel there is a way to incorporate therapy techniques into your personal work? John, into personal work?
100%. I want to also just quickly add to what Connie had said, and which is very intuitive that you mentioned me with the depression piece of it, because that's what I was going to say initially, is that depression is not just a mental health issue. You can't be depressed without physically being depressed. So I've seen clients where they come in depressed, and once the breath unlocks, it's almost like a chiropractic adjustment, one of my favorite things to do, right? Where it really is instantaneous. And so in terms of self-care, we all know that we're in a parallel process. We're all healing ourselves simultaneously, both in and out of the session, right? Where we can really strike that balance between either utilizing who we are as people as a therapeutic tool in training with the client, so that we're also breathing. We're also even having catharsis in sessions. That's completely fine, providing it's truly serving as, sort of equal mutuality in that. So we have to breathe no matter what. So using our creativity, if we can't do it for ourselves, then certainly are we really giving our clients something that we can't give ourselves? Ideally, we're able to do both. And I have to do this. Benedicta said to me when I first met her, I really believe some people are born a music therapist. And maybe she said this to Michael as well. I think you are a natural music therapist, and Alice too. Alice, I have to mention this because you see how uncomfortable Alice got when, you said, oh, you're practicing music therapy. She's like, you can't say that, because of course we do have certain levels in the profession where we've got to make sure you're getting your clinical training or whatever else. But I would like to see, in terms of bringing music therapy more to the mainstream, it being a little bit more okay. You can't call someone a board certified music therapist, but Alice is absolutely a music therapist at heart. And I would like to see that Venn diagram broaden just a little bit. We can't have anybody just calling themselves music therapists just because it sounds fancy. But truly, when you're doing this kind of work, I think that there can be other certification programs or whatever else, just to sort of open it up so we don't have all these artists complaining about Spotify revenue, which is fair, but there's so much talent that people have that can be so useful, it's so needed, and we've got to broaden it from just playing bars and gigs and doing it that way. There's such a need for the talent that's in us, and that's how we create that interdependence where people can express themselves as artists, and that becomes a vehicle for healing for the other. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, once again. Thank you to the panelists for taking your precious time today and making it here. Incredible session. It is being recorded. It will be available on YouTube on our website. And please do sign up on Artsee community if you haven't already for future webinars and workshops. And thank you so much for sharing your personal stories.